Society degrades. Toward the end of the first parsha, at the outset of the book of Genesis, chapter 6, verse 4, just before God decides to rain down upon the world a terrible, audacious flood that's going to encompass everything and everyone save a single family. And just before that begins to happen, God says in the end of chapter 6, verse 4, that there were at that time living giants Nephilim who lived in the land, Anshe Shem. There were men of great renown. It's as if to say everybody knew their name. And Rashi comments upon that there, saying, yes, everybody in the world did know their name. They were famous the world over. In fact, the Torah even lists their names later on, as if to say these people of power held everything so tightly to their chest that they controlled every movement in the world. Now, this same phrase, Anshe Shem, men of renown, finds its way into this week's Torah portion called Korach, where the men of renown, Anshe Shem, gather together collectively under the leadership of a cousin of Moses called Korach to mutiny. They were so disgruntled, so angered, so bitter that they wanted to displace Moses as the leader of the Jewish people and put somebody else in charge. The somebody else, well, Korach wanted it to be him. But one wonders whether these Anshe Shem wanted it to be them as well. There's some interesting parallels, however, with last week's Torah portion, where Moses, under God's careful tutelage, was being told that all of the princes, each leader of the tribe, was to be gathered together to go out and spy out the new land. These were the princes. These were Anshe Shem. These were men of great renown. Everybody knew their name. Everybody knew their distinction. In fact, the Torah goes way out of its way last week to spell out who they were and which tribe they came from. We know their names well. These were the people that were gathered under Korach to do the most awful thing, the most terrible thing imaginable at the time, rebelling against God's chosen and appointed leader. And one wonders about the meaning of this. If you just look under the rock for a moment, last week's Torah reading sentenced the Jewish people to wandering in the desert for 40 years because they listened to these 10 spies. One wonders not only what happened to the children of Israel and their attitude toward the 10 spies and Moses, one wonders too what happened to these 10 Anshe Shem, these 10 leaders of great renown. How did they feel? How did they deal with failure? Because this ultimately is what is going to judge our soul through the passage of time and ultimately when we become stationary, awaiting judgment before God's holy throne. How do we deal with failure? Do we lash out? Do we call other people stupid? Do we call them insane? Do we call them misguided, misplaced? Think of other things to say. Think of ways to undermine their authority. And this is probably what Moses had to deal with as these people were gathered together, rallied together against him. But the most important issue is, for us, what do we learn from this? How do we cope with failure? Failure is supposed to be a great teacher, not something that we rebel against, not something that we fight against, tooth and nail to try to prove our rightness, our correctness, despite all evidence to the contrary. Failure is supposed to be an educator. We're supposed to learn from the errors of our past. And perhaps this week's Torah reading, Korach, is all about learning the lessons and growing from them instead of doing everything we possibly can to fight against what is right, what is true, and known by everybody except us. Shabbat Shalom.